Hey, Marcus House with you here. Welcome to 2023 and a really interesting set of topics today to kick the year off. A bunch of neat new things to discuss at Starbase Texas. What is this crazy thing? And what about those? A very exciting launch and return to landing site for Falcon 9, but also some super interesting payloads to talk about within that Transporter 6 mission. A brand new, fully reusable vehicle with only a metal heat shield? How is that going to work? And then, well, a bit of a surprise to kick off the new year.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Alright, let's kick this week off by looking at the orbital tank farm at Starbase Texas. As seen here by RGV, SpaceX plans to upgrade the amount of available heat exchangers with a new unit arriving here not long ago. Just in case you are new to the topic or aren't certain why SpaceX uses these, with the use of liquid nitrogen, they super chill the liquid oxygen and methane as it is fed into the booster or Starship. That super chilling causes the propellant to densify, and that essentially means that they can fit more of it in the tanks, and also because of that lower temperature, it keeps it boiling off as a gas for longer. In fact, you may have actually heard that on the Falcon 9 streams too.
Falcon 9's oxidizer is super chilled liquid oxygen, or what we call densified LOX. It's chilled well below its boiling point, which increases its density and allows us to load more into the first and second stage LOX tanks.
The use of those heat exchangers is why you see all of that venting during loading. All of that liquid nitrogen is reaching its boiling point as it cools the oxygen and the methane further down. That boiling nitrogen gas is then just vented off. Now that wasn't all though in this area, as recently they have also installed this vaporizer onto a pedestal with a huge fan system. Given its close proximity to the nitrogen storage tanks, SpaceX might be upgrading the pressurization system. As the tanks drain, the volume needs to be replaced. Well, this is going to convert that cryogenic liquid to gas very rapidly and ensure that the overall pressure in these colossal vertical liquid nitrogen tanks is not going to drop below the minimum rated operating pressure. So just this week we've seen a very interesting new contraption being assembled at the launch complex near the orbital launch mount. Along with that, self-propelled modular transporters were positioned right beneath it. So what is this thing, you might ask? Well, we think the best explanation is that SpaceX plans to test that the booster hold-down clamps can withstand the weight of a fully loaded full-stack vehicle, that is, the fully loaded booster and Starship together as it prepares for liftoff. These are some really neat renders of it here by Everett Jan. Based on the latest mass estimate, the full stack is about 5,000 metric tons or so. Now, they are not going to test all that mass at once, of course, but what they can do is test each pair of clamps at a time with 1/10 of that weight, something that aligns well with these top interfaces, which do kind of look similar to the booster. A brilliant visualization here of it all by Ryan Hansen as well, which gives a pretty good idea on how this works in action. In typical SpaceX fashion, just days later, we can already spot the testing is underway with the contraption taking the weight off the transporters. I suspect that gradually SpaceX was increasing the weight to verify the whole system is capable of lifting in excess of the 500 tons needed. Some of you may have already noticed the VersaBar logo here, and they are no stranger to lifting big and heavy loads, as pointed out by O here. Just take a look here at this awesome picture of the Space Shuttle Independence replica being lifted with one of their load spreaders. In fact, he has been hard at work here modelling a new method of lifting ships with cranes. Starship Gazer recently spotted these units here. When assembled, we think that this should allow SpaceX to pick up the Starship by the same attachment points used by the chopsticks, rather than needing the separate lifting points on the nose. This seems to have been a long time coming, but the end result should be something like this. Ship 24, in fact, was lifted off the suborbital pad by those exact lifting points just the other day, hopefully in preparation to be fully stacked together with Booster 7 very soon. This is getting exciting once again. Over at the build site this week, the external door was on the move for Ship 25. Now, we've already covered some of the other modifications of the ship in earlier episodes, but to sum it up, SpaceX modified the external stringers and they drilled holes in its payload door. That was a clear indication that this Starlink Pez dispenser door would be permanently sealed shut. It's not going to be used. That time has obviously now come. On Tuesday, 2 self-propelled modular transporters were moved into the ring yard and parked in front of the Mega Bay, all in preparation to be moved under Booster 7 for its future move to the launch site. Well, it was actually moved to the front of the Mega Bay midweek. It is unlikely, I think, that we're going to see this moved to the launch site until the orbital launch mount testing has been completed. Well, with a brand new year and perfect weather to fly, we dive straight into mission number 1 for 2023 for SpaceX and launch number 200 overall. Lifting off on a beautiful clear morning from Slick 40 from Cape Canaveral, the Transporter 6 rideshare mission was off. This colossal mission was jam-packed with quite the assortment of 114 different payloads heading for orbit. Once past max Q, it was full throttle, and just look at the coast there below at stage separation. This was an incredible return to landing site mission, and on this day the footage was absolutely breathtaking. The core stage boost back burn kicked in here quickly, followed by fairing separation, opening up the view to all of those payloads continuing on their second stage ride. Honestly, I could fill this ride out and just talk about the return in real time, but this time lapse instead should give you a pretty good idea how great this was. Now, we had everything here with this one: an uninterrupted view from the booster and the landing burn and views from the ground. Just 7 seconds after the second stage engine cutoff, the booster safely landed back at LZ-1, the second ever booster to land 15 times. Very cool. Of course, back to the second stage, we had a lengthy mission to watch play out. Around 47 minutes in before we had a quick 2-second engine burn to circularize, and time for the main event as payload deployments kicked off at the 58-minute mark. There was loads of activity spanning around 33 minutes of spacecraft popping goodness. Now, there were a couple of noteworthy payloads in my opinion. Here we had 36 Super Dove satellites dubbed Flock 4Y. These were satellites by Planet, and it took just 14 minutes to complete just this part. Planet have partnered with SpaceX several times in the past, and on this mission they also partnered with the Roddenberry Foundation's Boldly Go campaign. Kicking off in 2021, the campaign celebrates Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry's hope for humanity as we strive for inclusion and scientific advancement. 5 Super Doves in particular had some amazing artwork and some quotes laser etched onto their side panels. Also along for the ride, which I've just got to share, was the largest Australian-made payload to orbit, a 300-kilogram proof of concept dubbed Skycraft-1 from the Aussie company Skycraft. That quite sizable unit deploying here almost 90 minutes after launch. It is actually a satellite stack, in fact, 5 satellites in total, which then deployed something like this, as shown by our good friend Tony Bella. Skycraft will be populating a low Earth orbit constellation with around 200 plus satellites over the next 2 years. This will make for a significant contribution to radically enhance aviation safety, surveillance, and communications. How so? Well, aircraft use automatic dependent surveillance broadcasts to display position and altitude on screens without the need for radar. Radar is great, of course, when there is adequate ground stations listening and relaying that information to air traffic control, but when it comes to real-time data and knowing exactly where aircraft are, we can do so much better, specifically for monitoring remote and ocean trips. Currently, aircraft can only be monitored up to a few hundred kilometers offshore before other surveillance methods are required. Skycraft is going to be shaking things up considerably in the near future, taking already proven terrestrial-based services into space. So now, in addition to providing air navigation service providers with real-time data, they will complement this with seamless real-time voice and data communications directly between air traffic control and the cockpit, all hopefully on a global scale. Leveraging the lower launch cost that SpaceX reusability and rideshare missions now offer, Skycraft will be uniquely positioned to provide a second-to-none service to the aviation sector around the world. And that is just one great example of how SpaceX's low-cost rideshare missions are literally changing the world. Now, you may have previously seen this clip here from Stoke Space and wondered, like I did, what the heck is this Ring of Fire? Well, we've been looking more and more into this very intriguing company, and you know what? I am finding this concept absolutely astonishing. The second stage is the most exciting part for me, but the first stage that will push it out of the thickest parts of the atmosphere will run off 7 liquid natural gas and oxygen engines, and just like many new rockets in design recently, it'll fire back up and either land back at the launch site or downrange on some kind of floating platform, I imagine. But onto the second stage. Stoke Space recently released this animation of the prototype in development. This is more like a capsule design, but with some very unique twists. What they are aiming to do here is have this unique set of 30 small thrusters which are all independently controlled, and they sit right around the outside of the heat shield. Yep, that's right, this is a completely reusable rocket, including the entire second stage. The great thing is that the plume of all those 30 thrusters merged together in this Plug Aerospike inspired design. That will provide exceptional performance all the way from the first stage separation right through to orbit using liquid hydrogen and oxygen as the propellant. Given that the first stage is going to be using the liquid natural gas for the fuel, they are going to need the 3 propellant sources for the full vehicle. Now, once in orbit, the nose fully opens up, the payload is deployed, and it will complete a deorbit burn before kicking off this unique atmospheric re-entry. This is the really interesting bit. The heat shield here isn't using any sort of tile or ablative coating. This is simply a metallic heat shield. What metal is this that can withstand those temperatures? Well, the idea, I suspect, is that cryogenic propellant is sitting right here in this area of the vehicle, actively cooling the metal. I imagine also venting any boil-off pressure externally at the same time. Once safely through the atmosphere and close to the ground, the engines will fire up at low throttle for a hopefully nice, precise landing. Now that I have got to see. I know what you're thinking, right? There are a lot of similarities with SpaceX or Blue Origin vehicle designs, and that I suspect is because there are apparently a bunch of former SpaceX and Blue Origin employees working here. I just love this burst of innovation from these private companies. So what is one of the most exciting things coming up for Stoke Space? They want to put this second stage through all sorts of tests, and due to the unique thrusters, they can do all of that at sea level no problem. Similar to SpaceX's Starship test flights we saw the other year, Stoke Space is going to run vertical takeoff and landing tests as a demonstration. There's loads to test out here, such as the thrust vector control, avionics and stuff like that. I'll certainly be keeping you up to date with this project. I just think it is super exciting seeing all of this stuff from new companies and also those that are now well established. And as we count down to the first orbital test flights of Starship, I think it is worth having a refresher on why we think that this is so critical, and following this as well, a few questions for you, because as we kick off a brand new year, your opinions are critical on how we plan out 2023.
Why are we doing this? I mean, pretty epic, but what's the deep meaning behind this? Like, why build a giant reusable rocket? Why make life multi-planetary? And I think this is just an incredibly important thing for the future of life itself. There's always some chance that something could go wrong on Earth. The dinosaurs are not around anymore. There could be some calamity that where we do ourselves in, or there's a natural disaster. Now I'm naturally an optimist, so I think the probability of that is low, but it is not zero. Eventually, the sun will expand. It might take a few 100 million years, so don't hold your breath. But eventually, the sun will expand and destroy all life. So for those who really care about not just the humans, but all the life on Earth, it is very important, essential, that over the long term, that we become a multi-planet species and ultimately even go beyond the solar system and bring life with us. We are life's stewards, life's guardians. The creatures that we love, they can't build spaceships, but we can, and we can bring them with us. And I think that's pretty important. So that's like the defensive or the life insurance reason for life collectively. But there's also an inspiring reason, which is that life can't just be about solving problems. There have to be things that inspire you, that move your heart, that when you wake up in the morning, you're excited about the future. Going out there and being a multi-planet species and being a spacefaring civilization and making science fiction, not fiction forever, I think that's one of those things. That's what fires me up the most, is like, let's go out there and find out what this universe is all about. Are there other species out there? Maybe. You know, if we go out there and we explore the galaxy, ultimately, then we can find out some of these questions. And it will just be very exciting to do that. And something we can all look forward to. You know, whether somebody chooses to go or not, I think vicariously we can all go there, just like with Apollo, where, you know, only a handful of people went to the moon. But in a sense, we all went there. Humanity went there. And so even if somebody doesn't choose to go themselves, I think through others, they will go, they will understand, they will experience the universe. I think that's incredibly fundamental to an exciting future. And that's why we're doing this. One of the rebuttals we'll sometimes hear is, like, sure, but what about all the problems on Earth? And I completely agree that the vast majority of resources should be dedicated to solving problems on Earth. Absolutely. I'd say like more than 99% of our resources should be oriented towards solving problems on Earth. So it's important to note that NASA's annual budget is only 0.36% of the federal budget. And in fact, of the national GDP, it's less than 1/10 of a percentage point. We're only spending 0.1% of our resources on space. I think that's okay. We'll be fine. Just make sure people don't think like, well, is he suggesting that we just spend everything on space? No, I'm suggesting like maybe 0.5% or something like that. Given the establishing security for life itself and having an exciting future and inspiring kids, it's worth it. So how do we do this? How do we make life multiplanetary? What's the first step? And the essential technology, the holy grail breakthrough that's needed is a rapid and completely reusable rocket system. So this has never been accomplished before, and there's a lot of people for the longest time thought this was not possible. Now with Falcon 9, we've been able to show that you can have reuse of a boost stage and reuse of the fairing. That's a big step in the right direction. With Starship, we're aiming for full and rapid reusability. We obviously need to accomplish that. That's not done yet, but success is one of the possible outcomes, which I always think is when embarking on an endeavor, success should be at least one of the possible outcomes. And for this design, that is the case. And we're aiming for rapid reusability, which is why the booster is going to take off and then fly back to the launch tower and aspirationally land on the arms, which does sound insane. This bar chart that we'll show here really illustrates how profound a rapidly reusable rocket, especially a big one, what effect that has on total tonnage to orbit. The total mass to orbit to date of Earth is around 15,000 tons, maybe 16,000 tons. And the mass per Starship after a year, just 1 year of launching, if it launches 3 times a day, would be equal to all the mass to orbit of Earth to date. So that's just one Starship launching 3 times a day for a year. And we'll have more than that. Our goal is to be making at least one stack per month, and then ultimately potentially a ship every 3 days. There'll be more ships than there are boosters because the booster will come back in about 6 minutes. Excitement guaranteed. The propellant pumps are designed to fill the rocket in about half an hour. So this really is designed for rapid reusability. The tower and the launch system, which I call stage 0, is just as important as stage 1 and stage 2. The whole launch system, which is basically stage 0, is, I'd say, as complex and difficult as either the booster or the ship. So I really want to emphasize that this is a very difficult thing that requires a lot of hardcore engineering. This tower from design to construction was 13 months. So it's quite an epic structure. In fact, I mean, hard to believe it's real, except, it's right there. So we are building a launch site, a Starship launch tower at 39A at Cape Kennedy. And we're also building a Starship production facility at the Cape. So we'll have production facility and launch site here and a production facility and launch site at the Cape as well. Probably Cape Kennedy would be our sort of main operational launch site. And then over time, we'll have floating spaceports like ocean spaceports. We got these 2 converted oil rigs that are going to be turned into orbital launch sites. And they can be moved around the world. I think there could be quite a few of those We're making a lot of rockets, making a lot of engines. And then Raptor development, Raptor 1 was 185 tons of thrust. Raptor 2 is 230 tons of thrust, and I think over time we could get that to probably 250 tons. And it's also significantly simplified. So you can see the difference between V1 and V2. V1 looks like kind of like a Christmas tree spaghetti pile. A lot of fiddly bits. Raptor 2 costs about half as much as Raptor 1, despite having much more thrust, and I think just generally being a much easier engine to build and a more robust engine. So very excited about Raptor version 2, and it's only going to get better from here. The peak thrust that we've operated Raptor to at this point is 247 tons, and so I'm confident that with some improvements we can get to a 250-ton operating point. It's a spectacular piece of engineering. Extremely difficult to make, but it is one of the essential keys to making Starship work. Kind of need that ISP and thrust to weight. It'll be the first full flow stage combustion engine to get to orbit. There's 6 Raptors on Starship, currently 3 with the vacuum nozzle, 3 sea level. We'll probably end up adding another 3 vacuum engines. They kind of fill in the gaps and stretch the ship. I think is going to make a lot of sense. Upcoming Starship missions. Orbital flight is really just the beginning. We're going to have a number of Starlink missions that will launch Starlink satellite version 2. Even more exciting than that is the NASA human spaceflight mission. We're incredibly honored that NASA has selected Starship to take astronauts back to the moon for the first time in half a century. And then there's also the Dear Moon mission, which is going to take artists around the moon. And there's going to be some future announcements that I think people will be pretty fired up about. The sales pitch for going to Mars is that it's going to be cramped, dangerous, difficult, you might die, and that's the sales pitch. I hope you like it. Mars is a fixer-upper of a planet. It's going to take some work to make it easy to live there. But one day we could make Mars a planet like Earth, and I think we should. The critical threshold, I think, for Mars is to have a city that is self-sustaining. It's going to be incredibly difficult to make a self-sustaining city because if it's missing any ingredient at all, however minor that ingredient is, then if the ships from Earth stop coming for any reason, the city will die out. The critical threshold to pass one of the most important great filters for any species is to have the other planet no longer dependent on the original planet. So I don't know exactly what that tonnage is, but I suspect it is at least, if one tries to get the right order of magnitude, about 1 million tons. Starship is capable of doing that. It's capable of getting 1 million tons to the surface of Mars and creating a self-sustaining city. And I think we should try to do that as soon as we can. The window of opportunity may be open for a long time, and I hope it is, but it may also be open for a short time. And this is the first point in the 4.5 billion year history of Earth that it has been possible. I mean, let that sink in. 4.5 billion years, it's been a while. This is the first time it's been possible. We need to seize the opportunity and do it as quickly as possible. But I'm just incredibly proud of the SpaceX team and all the support that we received from Cameron County, from Brownsville, from South Padre. Yeah, let's go like hell to have an exciting future. Cool.
So yeah, putting all this together really helped recenter myself on why it is that we love this topic so much. A few questions for you though. Are you still loving this video format and how we break these videos up each week? Or in 2023, do you think that we should have more or less focus on Starbase in videos? Is this typical 20-minute video length still great, or do you want shorter videos? I'm interested in your thoughts on all that. And of course, if you love the content that I make here with the team, that subscriber button is critical for the algorithm to see growth and continue promoting my little channel here. I am so grateful that there are so many of you that love this industry, and of course for you amazing patrons and YouTube members that literally make all of this possible. Please do join us here if you want ad-free videos or to just join up and chat in our closed Discord channels. A few deep dive videos right here if you missed them for whatever reason. Happy 2023, enjoy the week, and I'll catch you for the next video.